Biztech's technology show. Today we feature Chris Vincent. He's the Chief International Officer at Pattern. Pattern is a category leader in the global e-commerce and market acceleration. Now, it was founded in 2013 and has grown to about 1,400 employees across the world, operating out of 24 global locations. Now, to tell us more, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian.
Now, Chris, for a start, give us an overview of Pattern and its history.
Okay, so we were founded in the United States in 2013. I came on board to Pattern through acquisition in 2017. So they purchased our business. We were working in multiple different countries, all outside North America. And what we were doing is we were helping brands grow their digital business through strategy and execution. And so we joined forces and took the Pattern model, which is buy the stock. So what we do is we acquire the stock from a brand and we're a full price seller. So if you think of us, the way I would describe us is a digital distributor. So in the new world, we basically distribute products across brands and markets, both on and offline, with a focus on digital channels. And we use technology and we use basically context and experience to drive those outcomes for brands.
Okay, so that is an interesting model because in the e-commerce space, you're probably one of the few companies I've heard that actually buy the inventory.
Correct.
So, and obviously that has a couple of advantages for the brand itself. It de-risks the brand, but obviously it transfers the risk to you. Tell us how you then use this strategy and accelerate growth, and then you obviously repeat this on a global scale across multiple marketplaces and platforms.
Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting question. I mean, basically buying the stock allows us to do a few things, right? So it allows us basically to back ourselves in the market. We get the revenue from the sale. The tricky part is selling it at full price in places like Asia, because again, MAP policy or retail price maintenance is illegal outside of North America. And so when you talk about global acceleration in terms of these marketplaces, really what we're doing is we're figuring out how to win in that market using technology. So we have our own proprietary tech that we use on the Amazon platform. We're extending it into other marketplaces currently. And then we use a lot of proprietary tech that we get from each of the individual markets to win there directly. But the key thing around this is the localization or the local knowledge, right? This is why we have so many locations globally. But I think we have something like 60 languages in our business. And local context matters when we're doing this. So we acquire the product, we look at the customer set, we look at the content, we look at the copy, we look at the social channels, we look at all of this stuff. And all of this is executed internally. So if you think of a normal, if I use China as an example, a trade partner business or a TP business, they basically outsource some of this activity. They may not be experts in those, but we built all of these activities and capabilities in our business directly. And so when you work with us, basically we're all in on this. We don't charge fees for running the marketing channel. We expect the brand to give us marketing dollars to drive awareness, but we don't charge a fee for that. So if you give us a 1 renminbi, 1 baht, $1, whatever it is, we'll spend that same amount and we don't charge you for it. So it is really like a partnership, and we found that works super effectively.
Okay, so you're king of the castle in Amazon because that's your home market. But then, as you said, globally, things are very different. In Asia, in the Asia Pacific region, you've got the Lazadas, the Shoppies of this world. Give us some examples of how you've helped brands in Asia Pacific region.
So that's a really interesting one. I mean, I think you would know, Brian, actually being in Asia, that it can be quite tricky. So there's a lot of different markets. And what we find is there's a lot of local heroes. So someone can help you in the Philippines, someone can help you in Thailand, someone can help you in China, Japan, etc. There's very few brands that have the same model across multiple different markets. And so, again, we work with some very large FMCG businesses that are looking for a single partner to partner with that gives a consistent experience, whether it be on Lazada, Shopee, Coupang, Rakuten, Tmall, JD. What we do is we take the content stack that we have, we use our in-house team to amplify that, and we obviously change the copy to the local language. What we do is then we get the product and we list it on all those different marketplaces with the right context. So what it takes to win in Indonesia is going to be slightly different than what it takes to win in China. And we apply that local knowledge for the brand. We've had some brands that we've grown 50% year on year when they were stagnant and going backwards. And interestingly, the answer to this question, Brian, is not about the content, the copy specifically. That's not the only thing. Part of it is around gaining control of your distribution and of your pricing strategy and the number of sellers who are selling your product in market. So again, we use our technology to get full visibility of who's selling the product. We give that visibility back to the brand so they can trace back where that gray or unauthorized product is coming from. And then they can work within their supply chain to close down some of these sellers to get rid of those unauthorized sales and to drive that full price sale up and to allow us to capture more if it's buy box or more share of market or get more sales to the flagship store, whatever that might be in the market.
And so this is an interesting thing because a lot of people come into ASEAN in particular and think of it as one market. And you correctly pointed out there's little nuances in each market. And ASEAN is 650 million people, yes. However, selling in the Philippines is much more difficult than selling or very different from selling in Malaysia or Indonesia, for example. And the local knowledge and the nuances are key to success.
100%. I mean, the way I think about this, the way we talk about this internally is we call it the executive dilemma. You've got all these markets, all these channels within the markets, you've got the culture, you've got the context, different currency. Oftentimes brands might know what they need to do to win in a single market, and they might be quite successful in that market. But when you start talking about a different channel within that market or a different market, generally, like if you think about, let's use Lazada or Shopee as an example, running Shopee or Lazada in a place like Singapore is going to be quite different than how you would win in a place like the Philippines. And so the local context really matters when you do this. So what we do is we have the local language, we have the local connections, we have the context behind it. And what we do is we act as an extension of the brand. So that executive dilemma we were talking about, how do you have as many resources as it takes to drive that? We're specialized in doing that on marketplaces and on digital. So our reason for being in the market is that we conquer that problem for brands. Brands do not want to bring on another 5 people to run a different market, but they certainly can sell the product to us. We give them the margin dollars right away. We are selling it at full price. So it's an amplification issue that we solve for those brands.
Now, Chris, I want to ask you, you've obviously repeated this across the world, but let's zoom in on the Asia Pacific regions.
Sure.
Share with us some specific examples of how you've helped companies succeed.
Okay, so let me talk about a large FMCG business that wanted to come into Singapore and Malaysia. A good example, okay? They're a $1 billion business globally. I think they have a $300 million business across Southeast Asia specifically. So I'll exclude China for this example. And in this scenario, they were struggling because they had unauthorized sellers. They had variable price across the different marketplaces. They were struggling to keep up with the change that was happening in the channel. So in other words, new sellers popping up. And again, a lot of this problem, when you work with brands, is a repeat scenario that happens no matter where you are. But in Asia specifically, because there's porous borders, potentially separated by water sometimes it's a land border, goods can be priced quite differently between different markets. So what you find is products that are meant to be sold in Malaysia turn up in Singapore or the Philippines or whatever, and there's an arbitrage opportunity there. So what we did with this brand specifically was we launched the official store, which they didn't have. It was all what we call Wild West, or a bunch of sellers. Once we established the official store on Shopee and Lazada, we started trading their product. We then started gathering intel and information on the other sellers that gathered their product. We started doing what we call secret shops or blind buys of the product. It was serialized. We reported that back because they didn't have the ability to do all this work specifically on this launch of this product, which they knew was doing big sales, more gray than authorized. And once we started doing these sales and feeding back to them, they were able to then go through their supply chain, through their normal routes, and find out where this product was originating from. On the back of this, we changed some of the packaging, or they changed some of the packaging based on our advice. We also connected them with a few third-party companies we work with on compliance. And from that activity, we were really able to reduce the unauthorized sales by, I would say, about 60 or 70%. You can't eradicate it 100%. The Americans call it whack-a-mole, which is, trying to catch up with everything that's happening there. But what we can do is make it hard enough for the gray unauthorized sellers to want to go to another product. And as a result, their sales are up, their authorized sales are up, they're getting more channel compliance, less cross-channel conflict. They're very happy with the experience, and we're now looking at extending into other markets in Southeast Asia with the same plan. And of course, all of this is context. The problem that they have in the Philippines and in Indonesia and in Thailand is slightly different than the problem they had in Singapore, Malaysia, okay? And so a different problem requires a different solution and a different skill set, which we will apply to the problem and solving that executive dilemma that they have.
Now, Chris, I want you to take a broader lens now and looking at just opportunities. Forrester says that basically online retail sales are going to grow from 1.5 trillion 2019 pre-COVID to about 2.5 trillion in 2024. What are some of the key trends that you're seeing and opportunities in the Asia Pacific region in the online retail space?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Certainly, there's a lot of interest in China always because they're big, but really there's a lot of other very interesting markets within the Southeast Asia region, okay? So if I look at the markets, of course, a lot of people are doing business in Singapore already. It's very, if I think about from a Western point of view, but we're seeing a lot of interest in Indonesia at the moment. We're seeing a lot of interest in Thailand. I would say that in terms of the markets and the categories, VMS or vitamins, minerals, and supplements is something that's taken off in a lot of different markets. We are seeing a tremendous amount of uplift in the region on those brands. Some of the brands we're working with in that area, or we call it the health space, are up 100% year on year. Now,
where is that coming from? Is that driven by, maybe you could give some insights on that, is that driven by increased awareness of the need to keep yourself healthy as a result of COVID?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's some knock-on effect there. People want to be healthier. They may not be getting this kind of nutrients through their own diet. It's word of mouth, what they're seeing in different countries, and it's spreading into Southeast Asia as well. Some of these products are really effective at tackling specific issues, okay? And certainly what we've seen is vitamin D, vitamin B being really interesting, but also I think as the world opens back up, people are, looking for other opportunities to get products in there. So of course, medical devices, we sell a lot of scar gel and topical ointments and creams. This is becoming very, very popular. And I think there's a nascent demand out there and awareness driving where if people know that there's a product that they can acquire for these for this particular ailments or conditions, they will go after it. And I think probably pre-COVID, a lot of people were focusing mostly on China. That has changed after COVID, and I think partly because it was hard to get into China with some products unless you had the right partner or connection. So I think there's a dual factor there, but COVID is really the inflection point where all this stuff is changing. People are now looking at Southeast Asia as a specific opportunity, and certainly a lot of the engagements we are doing now are because we have a multi-market offer that brands are looking to engage on. They don't want someone just to answer one market. They want someone who's going to be able to take on multiple markets.
Okay, so while you've been explaining that, I have a scenario that I don't want to run by you. I'm a successful brand in Indonesia, single market, doing really, really well in the consumer space. How can you help me become an ASEAN brand?
Okay, that's a great question. So I think what we would do is we would use our advisory, strategy, consulting background. We would look at all of the markets in the region, the competitive set, the GMV opportunity. We would look at the category sizing and a bunch of other factors around, market conditions. We lay it out in a very straightforward, what I call RAG statement, which is red, amber, green, what's good, what's not good. And we look at about 5 or 6 different areas within your business. This is going to be stuff like content, copy, competitive set, pricing, social channels, awareness. And we rate your brand versus the other ones that are in the market. And again, we come back and give you an opportunity matrix. Not every brand is going to scale and work in other markets, but we will tell you, again, what we think your brand would do. If it was our business, where would we take you? And then the idea behind this is we'll take you there if we think it's an interesting opportunity and if the brand is interested in doing that. So we do these things for free. It's not a big exercise. It's pretty easy to do once you've done it quite a few times. And again, it's a good insight for brands. Sometimes it's an insurance policy, right? So, should I or shouldn't I? And when we do this assignment and come back with a 4 or 5 page quick deck within a 10-day period, very easy for brands to kind of go, yeah, I should do this, or no, I shouldn't. And this, if I should, this is where I should go first. And again, we do that with the brand hat on, as if it was my business, what would I do?
And I asked you that question because if you look at what Pattern does, it's a very quick way to scale, or to at least test my ability to scale.
Yeah, correct. And I think what we want to do behind that, Brian, if you think about our model is high velocity, low margin. We're trying to make between a 3 and a 5% net margin after all the costs are done. So we need velocity. So when we talk to brands in that kind of scenario, the way we look at it is, give us a successful market that you're working in already, that we can work on the marketplace or marketplaces for you. And once we get that volume, we'll take you anywhere else you want to go. That might be Asia, that might be the Middle East, that might be Europe, or that might be North America. But that's the power of the Pattern model, is that we can literally take you to any one of the countries that we operate in, if it makes sense and we have that velocity behind us, so that we can drive that outcome for the brand.
And Chris, now wearing a different hat now of a different company, I see one particular opportunity just with what you just said, taking a brand literally globally wherever Pattern is. If you're a halal certified brand, especially in food, the world is your oyster, literally. And a lot of successful halal Muslim brands are in Indonesia and in Malaysia, but they don't sell outside of their home markets. And obviously places like Europe and the Middle East and Africa as well have huge Muslim populations.
Yeah, super important. So I think that's a great question. One of the things that's important when you start looking at food certifications and handling specific kinds of food, we've got organic licenses in quite a few countries. Halal is an important designation. If you're a Muslim, you want to make sure that it is treated and stored and kept in the right way before it comes to your door. And so again, we have that capability within our business to meet these kind of specific certifications. And again, we have the reach, we have the capability. I'm sitting in our business in Dubai for this conversation, so we're obviously thinking and living those kind of market conditions. So it is really important that whether you work with Pattern or not on a brand, if it's halal, that you're actually working with a brand that understands what needs to be done in order to treat your brand correctly.
Chris, it's been a fascinating conversation. I've really learned a lot, and I'm sure that our audience and the decision makers that watch this will be thinking about how they work together to expand out of their geographical markets. However, Chris, before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think that's great, Brian. So I talked a lot about the executive dilemma. I think this is the key thing that stops brands from accelerating their growth in different markets very quickly. Context is everything. Whether you work with Pattern or not, it's important that you have a partner that gives you that context. We are very transparent. If we get data, the data comes to the brand. For me, it's a symbiotic relationship. Whoever you work with to drive an outcome in a foreign market or even domestic, make sure that you're getting that awareness, make sure that you're getting that transparency, and make sure that you feel that you're getting all the answers from your partner, because if you're not, then it's not going to be a successful relationship.
Chris, on that note, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Thank you, Brian.
Now, we've been speaking to Chris Vincent. He's the Chief International Officer at Pattern. I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to Biztech's Technology Show. This interview will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.